Let me welcome the first team from team number 77 from Hong
So, hello everyone, my name is Pat.
And my name is Ashley.
And today we'll be talking about the systematic failures of society security, specifically in Taiwan public spaces. So, when we first did our preliminary research on this issue, we found out data that was astonishing to us. 70% of Taiwanese respondents actually believe that homicide cases in Taiwan were increasing, according to a reputable study. However, we thought that it was very interesting because we thought law enforcement and technology about law should be getting better and better at preventing these cases, right? And we checked the statistics from Taiwan National Statistics in 2025. And actually, we found that the homicide cases in Taiwan were actually on a long-term decrease from 2014 to 2024. And because of that, we wanted to figure out why this contradiction between public opinion and data actually existed. And after some further digging, we found that the reason for this misconception was the fear of indiscriminate attacks within the society. So, for instance, when we researched about public opinion as recorded by Taipei Times, we found that during the case of indiscriminate attacks in Taiwan, social media was flooded with highly emotional narratives, unease, anxieties, tensions, etc., from one single case. This illustrates the public fear in indiscriminate attacks that one single attack can cause. Therefore, for this research project, we decided to align our research focus on indiscriminate attacks, how it creates a sense of fear within the public, and policies, potential solutions that could mitigate this sense of fear within society, so that Taiwanese citizens can feel less fear from these attacks. However, to truly develop policies that appeal to all populations within Taiwan, we have to understand which populations are affected by this issue and what existing policies the government has to mitigate this issue. My partner, Ashley, will tell you about the background research we did on this part.
Okay, so the main groups of people who are affected by issues of insecurity are the victims in indiscriminate attacks and the people who work in places where these attacks occur. And specifically, these individuals would require long-term recovery and support because of the psychological trauma according to the National Union of Counseling Psychologists Association. But besides these people, the general population can also be affected by the incident through seeing the images of the attack on social media or other media outlets, which in fact, after a 4-year-old girl killing case in 2016, a survey made by Taiwan Media Watch reports that 97% of the respondents said that the case caused for panic, which shows that this issue not only affects the victims of the attack, but also next, to moving on to the existing data and research that highlights the importance of this issue. So according to the National Police Agency survey in 2025, about 91% of the respondents considered the safety in their community as good, while about 82% were satisfied with the region's safety. However, about 51% have satisfaction with the national safety, which means that there's almost half of the respondents who feel like Taiwan is not safe. Then, referring back to the same statistics that Pam has mentioned earlier, the number of Taiwan homicide cases have decreased by 2024, but if you look closely, the number of cases have started to rise again from 2023 to 2024, which indicate that the trend might be changing. So next, let me give you some context on how extensive the psychological effects and discriminating attacks have on Taiwanese citizens. So the Taiwanese citizens are not only affected by the case by seeing the panic on social media, but their daily habits are drastically changed by these cases. For example, according to the Taipei Metro Ridership Count statistics, the total number of MRT rides from December 20th to December 31st, 2025 was 1.7 million lower than the period in 2024. This was mainly caused by the 2025 summer random study case that occurred on December 19th, in which even though the government responded to the case by planning almost 2,000 more police deployments at these MRT stations around Taiwan, the ridership still dropped, which highlights that the case calls for the panic among the public, so that most people are now avoiding to take public transport. This will ultimately worsen the economy and the traffic, which would need more government resources to solve these new problems. So on the other hand, the Taiwanese government have established existing laws and policies in the 2000 to improve the Taiwanese society security. For example, and the government have also been making constant changes to these laws. For example, in 2014, after the Taipei Metro Staffing case, the National Police Agency, or the NPA, has enhanced the patrols and metro stations and other changes to the system. And also in 2023, after a successful raid against criminals, the government has changed the penalties for public shooting and also the use of unconventional weapons. However, with more killed and 11 injured in the 2025 Shanghai random staffing case, it shows that these policies alone are not enough to prevent these cases from happening, which therefore the public fear among Taiwanese citizens will still remain. This is why we came up with two solutions to tackle this issue and possibly mitigate public fear. The first one is a government-mandated security protocol submission from Taiwanese public places, and the policy number two is an educational program implemented into high school curriculum in Taiwan to raise the awareness on public safety.
So our first policy solution that we developed applies to any public spaces that are open towards everyone in the public. Specifically, venues that plan to or currently accommodate more than 500 people simultaneously, we apply to this plan. And these places must submit protocols, including security systems that they have, proof of drills, personnel that they employ, and also means of communication between each other and towards the government during the case of an indiscriminate attack or incident towards the government yearly. And these protocol regulations, the requirements for them, will be made public by the government, not only through textual, like big texts such as and PDFs, but also through news outlets and speeches and announcements, so that the whole world, all the citizens of Taiwan can understand the protocols and the safety measures that the Taiwanese government is taking for them. And on a side note, the owners will be the sole funders of the protocols required there. And if any institutions that meet the 500 individuals requirement does not follow these regulations, they will be forcibly closed by the Taiwanese government.
So we came up with this solution inspired by a similar approach in the UK called the Martin's Law. So the law requires venues that plan to accommodate over 100 people to have basic staff training and preparedness planning. And venues that plan to accommodate over 800 people will need formal risk assessments and also stronger security measures. And any failure to cooperate will lead to heavy fines. This shows that similar approaches have been implemented into other countries, which makes our policy more practical and implementable.
So moving on to the second solution that we developed for this program. The second solution that we developed, that we proposed, is a high school implementation public risk aversion education program, in which there are two parts to it: these 5D methodology and mandated lectures. 5D methodology is a globally recognized international bystander training program in which it contains 5 key ideas: distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. We will make this part of an essential course in high school, in which lectures from witnesses and experts will offer once per year about the 5D methodology, but also about their own experience potentially within indiscriminate attacks. And the goals of this program is to educate individuals on emotional regulation, consequences, and therefore reduce future violence in the future. And for the advantages of the two solutions, the advantages of the first solution include how there will be, the first solution, which is this one, includes that how there will be psychological comfort for the citizens because they know all the protocols and know what the government are doing for them. Secondly, the second advantage for this solution is that there's rigorous checking and everything will be made fair by the government. However, it also requires, the disadvantages include how it will require costs from the institutions themselves without government support. And moving on to the second solutions, disadvantages. Advantages include how institutions will be able to react faster towards the incidents for the first solution. And the regulations made public by the government will make it more fair. And then there will be more friendly visitors to the safe environments. And then just like I said, it will require government training and we can only minimize damage instead of preventing. Now, to elaborate on our second policy solution, the public risk aversion education program. The 5D methodology is similarly applied by the Australian government in Australia. They actually officially endorsed this methodology teaching within their government because to foster safer and more inclusive spaces through the issuing of posters within schools and towards the general public. And these are the specifics for each of the key details in which they teach in posters and talks. And for the advantages and disadvantages of this part, the advantages include how it will create reforms at a basic level for students and reduce future incidents in the long term. Another advantage includes how it will prepare future students in bystander situations, which will reduce damage for the students themselves and potentially mitigate this issue a little bit. Furthermore, it also encourages young students to think before taking action, fostering critical thinking, while also reducing future violence. Disadvantages of the solution, however, include how trauma may prevent witnesses from speaking in public mandated lectures, which makes the school harder to find lecturers to speak about their indiscriminate attacks. Furthermore, it also requires school resources like curriculum time, in which schools will have to squeeze this program into their already minimal solution in the minimal time. And furthermore, some students who do not pay attention to class may not take this lecture or find these methodologies seriously. Therefore, to conclude, we recommend our first policy, government-mandated security protocol submissions in public spaces, in which we believe it is the most effective, impactful, and realistic solution to mitigate this sense of fear from the public. First, it is the most effective because the government protocols are made public, meaning that it would psychologically comfort the public, since the public will then know what exactly institutions have to do and feel comforted. It is also the most impactful because from the implementation of this plan, whenever indiscriminate attacks occurs in these institutions, it will immediately be minimized due to the practice from the security systems, etc. And also, it ensures long-term trust from the public immediately instead of the education program where it will have to wait because the students have to grow up and become citizens. It is also the most realistic solution because most, if not all institutions, such as metros, malls, etc., that meet our benchmark of 500 individuals, can afford to apply to these new protocols, and there are already existing protocols within those institutions that they can build upon, so they wouldn't spend too much money. They wouldn't be forced to spend too much money or resources on this. So in conclusion, data from the Taipei Metro and other sources generally indicate that the general public are still very concerned about indiscriminate attacks, and there is a sense of fear that's building up from it. Because of that, we recommend solution one because of its apparent psychological effects through making regulations public, because the public will know what the government is doing, therefore they will be psychologically comforted. But also because of its real-world application that it will minimize damage in the event of an indiscriminate attack. However, we also acknowledge that solution two could be effective in the long term because it minimizes damage for students in the future. And the resources disadvantage we mentioned in solution two could potentially be reduced through collaboration with the governments, with other governments such as the Australian government, which already implements the 5 Ps methodology. So, in conclusion, we would like to leave you with a final note. We, as a team, believe that to improve the citizens' psychological health as a whole for the Chinese government, it is essential to provide them with a sense of safety that mitigates the issue brought by indiscriminate attacks in Taiwan. This is all for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Control. Even I can't do that. Any judges have a question that you wanted to have further clarification, please?
Speakers, I saw you borrow a few ideas from the UK as well as Australia.
Yes.
I think that's great. I understand why you want to establish precedent. I think it really helps in terms of practicability, right?
Yes.
So I think it's great to look for those precedents. My question is that do we have proof of, for example, psychological well-being, those sort of policies affecting that? Is the UK safer because of these policies? Do we have it? Did we address that or look at that, or what's your opinion?
Well, we've done some preliminary research on that, and we find that multiple research papers, such as the one we cited here, indicates that specifically in metro stations, that was very helpful. Specifically in metro stations, individuals felt more comfortable in riding the metro stations when the government had regulations for the metro open to the public. So I think it's a really strong source that indicates there's really psychological comfort coming from the regulations. And in addition to that, for my opinion, if the government were to announce in the news or news articles specifically through an outlet that kind of sense to me that we're doing this to prevent these attacks, and it's to protect you guys, I would feel much more comfortable going around into metros. Perhaps I might feel comfortable going around Taipei because New Taipei City, because I live around New Taipei City. But if the government actually announces these things and this is nationwide our solution, I would be even more comfortable to go to perhaps China and other cities. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So I really want to see and understand how you two come up with this topic. Because from an educator, we really want to see future students, how you see the world, why you pick this topic to discuss, why you think this is more related to your daily life.
So, well, we thought this was very related to our daily life because first Ashley said that her relatives were very concerned about the indiscriminate attacks that happened in 2025, and it was that her relatives were scared to go out even. And my relatives, my parents, were also a little concerned about the news when they saw this. So when we went into this competition, we thought, a social issue. I guess if a psychological issue within citizens counts, that's a really big issue that affects us. And then because of that, we tried to develop solutions such as the protocol so that we could mitigate the psychological issue. And I actually asked my relatives and my mother about this solution, and she was like, if the Chinese government actually did this, maybe I would feel a little better. So this is the inspiration for it, basically.
Actually, can I also hear from you?
So I mentioned when the case in the John case in 2025, it really affects the society, like you mentioned. And when we delved into the topic, we didn't actually know that there was this big of a psychological effect on citizens. We thought that we just systematical problems in these policies in the government. But when we delve deeper into research, we found out these surveys actually show that people are not satisfied with the Taiwan's surviving safety around Taiwan. So we decided to come up with policies to mitigate the fear instead of like actually changing the original policy or the security distancing.
Okay. I have no time to judge to that. Then you might have questions. I have to invite the next group. So thank you again for the presentation.
Apologies that like the presentation slide might be a little bit like messy. I'm sure you noticed that. I think it's because of a technical issue that like some of our slides, how the order of it got pushed a little bit. So I had to like make some improvisations on the stage. So my apologies for that. And thank you for you guys for this.